Good morning, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to more esports news. The most talkable topic in the gaming/esports scene over the past few days has to be that of gun violence, and what many politicians are now stating actually leads to that gun violence and mass shootings, especially here in America, is supposedly video games. I talked about this a couple of days ago when Donald Trump came forward, actually blaming the entire industry or video games in general as being grisly and what could be potentially the leading cause of what are an epidemic here in America. The mass shootings going on ever since, a couple years back. Alongside him and many other politicians have spoken out against video games despite the lack of evidence. I mean, it blows my mind. It's still a talking topic, and I think a lot of people luckily are speaking out against this. We have an entire community of gaming people out there now in defensive mode because of what a few politicians are now saying is the root cause of mass shootings, that being video games such as Fortnite, which you could not imagine a more kid-like game. No offense to the Fortnite genre. I love the game, guys, but the fact is this, that some people out there, an older generation of politicians, do believe that you playing Fortnite could lead to you eventually being a shooter, and I take deep offense to that, especially when you take into the concern as well the lack of evidence. There is no direct correlation, no studies, and no actual sufficient research done that shows a direct correlation between you playing violent video games and, of course, leading to violent activities in real life. And despite that fact, we still have politicians taking to public media and obviously painting the video game industry in a not so fair light. And even if you don't believe what I just said, you can go look for yourself and go try and find a study that shows a direct correlation between you playing a video game and becoming a mass shooter, and you will find nothing. And if you still don't believe me, please do me a favor in the comment section, guys. Find me a research study. Find me any case out there that actually has sufficient evidence of a direct correlation between video game violence and real life violence. There are certainly a variety of causes out there that do cause these issues here in America, and that's the thing. It is only here in America. Meanwhile, the second main point I do like to make, besides the lack of research showing a correlation between those two things that politicians want to actually name as the root cause of mass shootings, which there is no backing for, the second main thing is we look at the sheer disparity between the mass shootings here in America and other countries, and there is nothing that adds up to that, considering the fact that, yes, video games are widely known as a worldwide phenomenon, even played in other countries more than they are here in America. Yes, it's actually tough to believe. And where are their mass shootings? They're simply not even anywhere near America's number on the radar, guys. It does not add up, and I do not like the fact that some politicians out there take these stances as a part of their agendas. I would love to have more light shed on the topic and actually have more research done about this. If there is any correlation whatsoever that leads to even a small percentage of real life violence, then yes, we need to treat those similar cases in some sort of fashion, but we need the research to conclude that first before we jump on the bandwagon of some politicians saying, hey, if your kid plays video games, he's going to become a mass shooter. And thank goodness for a guy like Rod Breslow. If you guys are a part of the gaming community, you probably know him as Slasher on Twitter. He took to Fox News a couple nights ago in a very short segment, but with the time they actually allotted him, he did a great job touching on those points of defending the gaming industry and the correlation that does not exist between playing video games and becoming a real-life shooter or a violent and real-life person. And so here's what Rod had to say live on Fox News.
Rod Slasher Breslow is a competitive gaming leader and an esports consultant. You were here just last week to help me understand and explain to everybody about the benefits of Fortnite and these young people getting together in these big competitions, making a lot of money. But then we have these shootings. Rod, you're part of this community. You've been fighting back against this sentiment for a long time. How do you respond to that?
I mean, I've been watching a lot of the guests and interviews on Fox News, and it has been very frustrating as someone who comes from the video game industry. I've personally been playing first-person shooters in these games for, 15, 20 years, and I have never had any type of intention to go out and perform real-life violence. And that same sentiment is for everyone that plays video games. Video games are an international, worldwide phenomenon played in every single country in the world, including these first-person shooters played worldwide. But these things only happen here in America. We do not see or have that violence anywhere else in the world, even though everyone else is still playing those games.
Dan Patrick is the lieutenant governor of Texas. Of course, one of the shootings, the El Paso shooting, happening in his state. He had this to say about a soldier fantasy. Watch this.
This manifesto, he talks about living out his super soldier fantasy. We've always had guns, we've always had evil, but what's changed where we see this rash of shooting? And I see a video game industry that teaches young people to kill.
Okay, so he's making the case that if you have especially these shooter games where you can actually basically dehumanize somebody, he's making the case that maybe that is a problem.
Yeah, and it is total nonsense, and it sounds like the same politicians that would do the same thing 10 or 15 years ago, whether it's blaming Grand Theft Auto or Marilyn Manson and metal music, to try to push the issue aside from anything that is actually happening. All forms of entertainment, whether it's video games or movies or music, do not directly influence someone to have violent acts. And to perpetuate that stereotype is hurting the entire discussion and is moving away from the real issues that are going on here, most namely guns and the access to the gun issue. I mean, I've seen a lot of people talking about it. People don't want to be taking away people's guns in this country, but there has to be a better discussion on you being able to acquire them and everything around that. And there are other accelerated issues like mental health that go on.
Let me ask you about this, because we're going to talk to Jonathan Morris in the next segment about this idea that of young people who are, young men in particular, who are disaffected from their communities, loners, maybe in their rooms, but they find these online chat rooms. But it's a misconception to think that those are the people that are actually participating in games like Fortnite, because as you were showing us last week, people who are playing games with people all around the world, they have more friends than they can count.
Yeah, it really is a misconception of people thinking that people are sitting in their basements or whatever playing games. But in reality, especially with the current way that games are gone, everything is online and there's a lot of international competition, whether it's video games or esports. People are communicating with other people from around the world every day, and it really is a community of people meeting each other, meeting up, talking to each other, and really get friend groups that you're not able to. For a lot of kids out there playing games at home, being able to sit there and play games with other people is what uplifted them and is what really brought them into a new light when maybe they were in a dark place. And games are a thing that brought people together, and really that is what should be noted more for.
So how frustrating is it for the gaming community to listen to, as you're saying, politicians who are using arguments that they've been using for 10 or 15 years, even if it was movies back when I first worked on Capitol Hill?
Yeah, I mean, it really is ridiculous. I mean, for me to hear, it's also to watch Fox News and see people come on.
Well, it's not just Fox. I mean, they're everywhere.
It is not, but, you know, it's including Trump, to see him continue to perpetuate the myth that video games and other forms of entertainment media like music or movies are really influencing the youngsters out there to do these acts is ridiculous. And we need to move on from these topics to really get into why this is continuing happening, because we don't want to see shootings in America.
And since this interview, politicians continue to come out against video games, whilst other figures across the YouTube and creation scene as well, Trevor Noah, alongside him, Steven Crowder, amongst many, many others a part of the gaming community, have come out to actually defend, of course, that being the accusations against video games. So there is certainly an open debate out there. It seemingly is politicians versus the rest of the world. So I think we are still in the far majority of people out there that do not believe that video games are the cause of all of these shootings. And I think hopefully it turns more light to this and actually hopefully more research on the topic of what actually leads to all of these shootings, especially here in America, which has become a sheer epidemic, guys. There are certainly a variety of causes, and we need to figure out exactly how to solve those. Even if video games was a cause, I think it's at the very, very bottom of what needs to be addressed, especially in this country right now. As always, my name is Jake. I hope you guys all enjoyed the gaming and esports news, breaking it down here all day long. Until next time, guys, take care. Thank you for all the love and support, and I'll see you next time.